To see the strangest and scariest thing hiding in swamps, you need to go to France, to the nature reserve of Sting. If you go to this place alone, unaware of what awaits you, you will remember what you'll see there for the rest of your life, and it will haunt you in nightmares for a long time. So, imagine you come to these marshes by car. It's early morning, nature is waking up, and a cool breeze is blowing. You carefully go through the grass and come out to the green swamps. At this moment, you notice a silhouette. The creature is on the shore, leaning over the water. It looks like a human. It's squatting. Its legs are long like those of a grasshopper, and its thin arms resemble tree branches. This skinny creature is completely covered with mud and green algae. It's sitting right there, and it looks much bigger than you. You slowly step back in horror, hoping the strange swamp monster won't notice you. Then, you see another similar creature lying on the grass. There are several of them. Your heart is pounding so loudly that you're afraid the monsters will hear the sound. Fortunately, you manage to get into the car unnoticed and drive away from there. You've just seen Homo algus, swamp creatures that consist of algae and mud. Yes, they do look creepy, but don't worry, they're not alive. They're statues made by one architect. She wanted to show the importance of swamps in the natural world with the help of her creations. People associate swamps with something terrible, but in reality, they're huge reserves of fresh water and a habitat for thousands of living beings. Life starts and ends in swamps, and of course, loads of scary myths and fairy tales appear around these places. The sculptor decided to combine natural features and creepy folklore into these statues. The color, texture, and coating of Homo algus change over time with the surrounding landscape. The next mysterious thing is the one you can only see at night. It's a strange, rare phenomenon called fool's fire, or spooky lights. So, you're driving along a highway between two small British towns. The moon is shining brightly, and you decide to go off the road and wander around a swampy area. You leave the car and notice a strange orange ball floating right above the water. This ball flies in different directions and seems to lure you closer. Perhaps it's a person with a kerosene lamp calling for help. Two more balls appear next to it. You get scared. Don't try to go in their direction. Otherwise, you'll get into a trap. It's dangerous to walk through the swamps. For centuries, people have seen this phenomenon. Many went towards such balls because they thought it was someone who needed help, but those who approached fool's fire never came back. Previously, people thought that these were some mystical creatures from another world, but today, science can explain the nature of this phenomenon. Bioluminescent fungi and algae grow in swampy places and can glow blue in the dark. From afar, they can create an illusion of an orange ball. Wind and water shake these algae, and it seems like they're flying through the air. Also, swamps contain many plant materials: grass, clay, leaves, and branches. All this decomposes and releases methane. As soon as this substance comes into contact with the air, it ignites and rises in the form of a fireball. Now we're in Alabama, near the town of Prattville. Here, there are swamps that are popular among teenagers. Young guys and girls come here to meet with phantoms and some fantastic monsters. Of course, these are all fairy tales and legends people like telling each other. But sometimes, locals hear a strange noise coming from the swamp's depths. It sounds as if something heavy falls on something solid. So imagine a small town, curious teenagers, creepy tales and legends, and a place called Bear Creek Swamp. All these are the perfect elements for an excellent horror movie. And here's how it could start. In 2014, the county sheriff was driving between towns on a dirt road past these swamps. It was Tuesday morning. From the corner of his eye, he noticed something strange sticking out of the green water. He stopped the car, got out, and saw a creepy picture. Bamboo stakes were sticking out of the swamp, and 21 dolls were impaled on them. Most of them were porcelain. They looked expensive and antique. Indeed, this collection was worth a lot of money, but someone left them in the swamp in such a terrible state. Their faces and hair were covered with white paint, as if someone wanted to erase their smiles and eyes. The sheriff decided it was some kind of sinister Halloween joke and thought nothing of it. He returned to the office and told his colleagues about his discovery. Then, one of the police officers took a photo of the dolls and posted it on the internet. It became viral. The locals began writing to the sheriff's office, expressing their concerns. What if it was some kind of ritual? Who did this? How long will the dolls stay in the swamp? After this kind of reaction, several officers took a canoe and sailed for 30 minutes to get to the dolls. They couldn't identify their owner. The only clue was a logging company that owned the territory. The police tried to contact them, but no one answered. So they decided that if the owner came, they would return all the dolls to them. There's nothing mysterious in the most terrible things that swamps hide. These are not some mystical creatures or strange objects. I'm talking about crocodiles. And now, we will go to the one place where they pose the greatest danger. This is Ramri Island in Southeast Asia. While passing through these swamps, you won't see anything suspicious at first. But soon, you will notice that everything has become quiet. Too quiet. You'll hear a strange sound as if something is moving in the mud. The swamp around you will begin to stir, and then you'll understand that this is not mud and water. It's crocodiles' backs. These creatures are almost impossible to notice. You count several dozens of them. Each of them can reach 23 feet in length. This is almost twice the size of a passenger car, and their weight is slightly less than a ton. One reptile can bring a lot of problems, and dozens can cause absolute chaos. They are patient and extremely fast. They hide in the swamps and then suddenly attack you. Fortunately, there are almost no crocodiles on this island now, but in the last century, there were many of them here. In the 40s, crocodiles came across a group of thousands of people who didn't expect that giant reptiles would be waiting for them. Only a few of these people managed to get out of the swamps that day. In the Guinness World Records, this event is described as the biggest human disaster caused by animals. Let's move on to the most unusual, but definitely not the most terrible finding. It's called swamp ghost, and it's a big plane. In the 1940s, the pilot made an emergency landing in this swamp. He was flying over Papua New Guinea and hoped to land in a wheat field. Unfortunately, he didn't notice a huge swamp because of the poor visibility. The pilot and two other crew members survived the hard landing. They left the plane and were cutting their way through sharp grass for 2 days. All this time, they were walking through the swamps, fighting off millions of mosquitoes. Finally, they got to dry land. Locals noticed them and took the pilots to their village. After that, the survivors sat in a canoe, went down the river, and reached the road. Everyone forgot about the plane. It lay in the swamps for about 30 years, covered with mud and algae. It became a local landmark. Then, in 1972, several guys from Austria accidentally discovered the aircraft, took some photos, and posted them in newspapers. At that moment, the plane became famous. In 2016, an American rescuer dismantled the plane and pulled it out of the swamp. Picture this, a group of vampire bats soaring through the dark skies in search of their next meal. These little creatures are just like the mythical vampires they're named after, as they rely on blood to survive. But don't worry, they usually go for cows, pigs, horses, and birds. Although every once in a while, they may pick a human. It's really rare. Rather than drinking blood like vampires, these bats make a tiny incision with their teeth, then lap up the flowing blood with their tongues. They're so smooth and dainty that they can actually drink blood from an animal for more than 30 minutes without even waking it up. Plus, this action doesn't even hurt their prey. Vampire bats have a lot of special talents to help them with their feeding. For example, they can detect prey by listening to the sound of animal breathing. They're even able to recognize the breathing patterns of one particular animal, for example, a cow, and go back to it night after night. Hey Pete, this one's delicious. Let's come back here tomorrow. Now, here's something you might not know. These flying mammals can walk, run, and jump, unlike other bat species. These abilities help them catch their prey. They also have heat sensors to help them locate the perfect spot on an animal's body to feed. And their strong hind legs, along with a special thumb, help them take off after they've finished their dinner. But what happens if a vampire bat can't find its nightly meal? If they go 2 nights without feeding, they won't survive. Luckily, some of these bats can be pretty generous towards one another. When they're well fed, they'll often spit up food to share it with other bats in exchange for grooming. And did you know that female bats are especially friendly to new mothers? How sweet is that? Meet the Egyptian tomb bat. A spooky-sounding name, huh? The body length of this creature is around 3 inches, with different subspecies varying in size. This little animal loves to hang out in ancient Egypt's dark, uncanny tombs. They look pretty cute with their big eyes and tiny ears, though. They love snacking on insects and roosting in cozy corners. Plus, they play an important role in maintaining the ecosystem by keeping insect populations in check. In the last decade, researchers discovered that bats could carry viruses, but I'll get to this dangerous part in a minute. Next up, we have a gray-headed flying fox. It's one of the biggest bats in Australia, with a wingspan of over 40 inches. It's like a bird, but cooler because it's a bat. A gray-headed flying fox is a sleek dark brown creature with a touch of pizzazz, thanks to a gray head and an orange-red mantle around its neck. Think of it as a bat that's dressed to impress. This fella hangs out in all sorts of places, from bustling urban areas to quiet forests, woodlands, and even intertidal mangroves. At night, this flying fox spreads its wings and flies up to 31 miles and then chows down on some yummy fruit. They're not picky eaters and will happily munch on native and introduced species, with figs being their favorite. They're such fruit fiends that they've earned themselves the nickname fruit bat. They also have a sweet tooth for nectar and pollen from native trees, especially gum trees. The gray-headed flying fox loves nothing more than to hang on tree branches and chatting with its bat buddies. They form camps of thousands of bats, which makes them the ultimate party animals. Even though they're social butterflies and love to hang out in large groups, gray-headed flying foxes are actually in decline due to habitat loss. We need to protect these furry creatures because they play a crucial role in healthy forest ecosystems. They pollinate and disperse the seeds of many important tree species. If you're looking for this bat, head to Eastern Australia, including Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. The tricky part is that you need to stay away from them. There are over 1,200 bat species on our planet. Now let's take a look at the bumblebee bat. It's also called Kitty's hog-nosed bat because of a biologist named Kitty Tonglongya who discovered them. These creatures are one of the world's smallest mammals. They weigh less than a penny and can fit comfortably on your finger. You can only find them in Thailand and Myanmar. Bats are awesome creatures, but let's face it, they can also carry some diseases. Let's begin with rabies. Bats are actually the most common rabid animal in the US. If you find a bat in your home, try catching it for testing. I know, it won't be easy because they fly around the house randomly like there's no tomorrow. But if you catch them, you can determine whether you need to get vaccinated against rabies. To keep bats out of your home, you can take some simple steps. Seal up any holes they could use to sneak inside. You can also use clear plastic sheeting or bird netting to help bats find a new home outside your house. And remember, always follow local rules and laws about removing bats because some of them are endangered and need special care. And what if you've been bitten? Bat bites can be super tiny, so even if you're unsure whether you got bitten or scratched, it's best to talk to a healthcare professional just in case. Better safe than sorry, right? Don't try to make friends with bats or touch them if you're outside. Just let them do their thing and enjoy the show from a safe distance. And if you do come in contact with a bat, wash the affected area thoroughly with soap and water and seek medical attention ASAP. One thing to keep in mind is that only trained and vaccinated people should handle bats. So unless you have those qualifications, it's best to avoid handling these little creatures altogether. If you encounter an injured bat or flying fox, resist the urge to play hero and help the animal yourself. Now, let's talk about the diseases bats carry. One of the most well-known is the Australian bat lysovirus. It's spread through contact with the saliva of infected bats, which can happen through bites, scratches, or coming into contact with mucous membranes or broken skin. The infection causes a rabies-like disease that's usually fatal, but don't panic just yet. There have been only 3 documented cases affecting humans, all of which occurred in Queensland. To avoid this disease, remember these 3 simple steps. Don't handle bats unless you're trained, vaccinated, and wearing appropriate gear. Wash any bat bites or scratches with soap and water for at least 15 minutes. Then apply an antiviral antiseptic and seek medical advice about rabies vaccination within 48 hours of potential exposure. Another virus to be aware of is the Hendra virus, which can be transmitted to humans through close contact with the body fluids of infected horses. The natural host for this virus is the flying fox, but there's no evidence that it can be spread directly from bats to humans. Finally, let's talk about rainwater tanks. While rainwater consumption is relatively safe, managing the risks associated with using rainwater tanks is important, especially if you have a weakened immune system. The bat-related viruses cannot be contracted from drinking or using water from rainwater tanks. For households using rainwater for food preparation and drinking, the risk of getting a gastro illness from bats is no different than getting it from other animals, including birds. Pets should also be protected. Vaccinating them against rabies and keeping them on leashes in public spaces to prevent contact with sick wildlife will definitely help. If a pet has come into contact with a bat, it should receive a rabies booster vaccine right away and be tested for rabies to determine if quarantine is necessary. Don't call the police if you see Batman. He's a different kind of bat.
If you were to look at Earth from the International Space Station at night, you'd be able to see the lights of the cities from space. That's how big our impact as a species is. There are huge multicultural cities all around the world. We've built buildings so high they nearly disappear out of sight. Cities built from the ground up for thousands and thousands of people to live in. But oh, what's this? What a beautiful monkey! What are you doing there, buddy? You want that banana? Yeah, it looks delicious. Be careful now, don't fall down that tree. Oops. Boy, nature can be so brutal sometimes. I'll bet it didn't wake up thinking it was going to become a lion's breakfast. What? No humans? Where did they all go? Looks like when that monkey fell from the tree, it created a chain of events that led to no humans ever existing on Earth. I know what this is. We must be in an alternate universe. Well, let's skip a few thousand years ahead. What does Earth look like? Humans have altered about 50% or more of the planet's surface. So there aren't going to be any cities or landscape previously shaped by us in this reality. There's not going to be a human touch at all. The Earth now seems to be an animal paradise. They're everywhere. These animals that were previously only found in Africa are now all over different continents. There are lions roaming free in America. Oh, and look, in Europe, there are rhinos, elephants, wolves. Wow, moose. Even bears are here. Since there are no humans taking up most of Earth's space, mammals are now free to be everywhere. Well, you know, different mammals than us. There's a huge diversity of them too. Earth has become what seems to be an expansion of the Africa we know today in terms of animal species. You can see large mammals too. Giant sloths, saber-tooths, and even mastodons are now walking the Earth like in the olden times. The reason why our Earth isn't like this is that humans take up a lot of the available space with their structures. For example, the reason why there's so much animal diversity in Africa in our universe isn't that the continent is just suited for animals to thrive. It's mostly because we haven't been too active in a big part of the continent. Our ancestors had a lot to do with the extinction of large mammals. Ice Age wasn't the only culprit there. On our Earth, humans are the intelligent life form. How about on this planet? As you might know, natural selection is what guides evolution. This, combined with random mutations we can observe in some species, suggests that even without humans on Earth, there's a chance for intelligent life to develop. So, primates are now the dominant life form, or maybe the meerkats evolved into a dominant species. The climate on this Earth is also cooler than ours. That's because there are no greenhouse gases. According to NASA, the current Earth warming trend is likely the result of human activity since the 1950s. This means the increased levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are the reason why our planet warms up. Greenhouse gases are called like this because, just like a greenhouse, they trap the heat. They let sunlight pass through the atmosphere, but the heat it brings doesn't leave our atmosphere because of them. They're a good thing because otherwise life on Earth wouldn't even be possible. But because now they're too abundant, it causes the planet to warm more than it should. Now, let's go back to our alternate Earth. In the water, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is still fully intact. And it's still the largest coral reef system there is, as well as the biggest living organism on the planet, just like ours. This new Earth is also full of trees, and lush ones at that. Greenery everywhere. All sorts of trees exist and are home to all the different animals on the planet. And since there's no deforestation, the planet's lungs, the Amazon rainforest, is able to thrive and is looking more alive and vibrant than ever. But say, what if humans were to show up on this Earth right now? Maybe this year, or the year before? They certainly wouldn't be the dominant species immediately, and would probably struggle at the very beginning. The evolution and learning process would be a slow one until they find themselves at the top. They have to adapt to their new home. This would be like traveling to around 130,000 years ago in our reality, to a place where modern humans, or Homo sapiens, had just shown up. Humans back then weren't new. The only new thing about them was that they evolved into Homo sapiens. It wasn't like we were dropped off from a spaceship onto Earth or anything like that. But in this alternative reality, that's exactly what happened. A bunch of humans were dropped from the sky on Earth. Now, they must learn everything from the ground up. They need to figure out how to survive and thrive in their new environment. They have to hunt for their own food, and they need to take what they can from the planet, much like we did 130,000 years ago. These new humans are nomads. They can't settle in one exact place because they need to explore and understand their surroundings, just like the animals that surround them. As their groups become larger, they split into smaller ones to find new places suited to build their homes, or even a place where survival might be easier. Since it's been a while that they've arrived on this new Earth, they've done some exploring and found themselves more comfortable in their new setting. Their tools are better developed, and home-like structures, like huts, finally start appearing. 50,000 years ago, we developed our language. These humans also developed their own because they need to communicate better with each other. With language, they become more and more organized and are able to make better plans for their future. All dogs come from wolves, and there are two theories of how it might have happened that wild beasts became humans' best friends. One theory says early humans somehow ended up capturing wolf pups and kept them as pets, and over time they would gradually domesticate wolves. Another theory states that wolves actually domesticated themselves. It's called survival of the friendliest. Because both wolves and humans were hunters, wolves probably also figured out they would have benefits if they stuck around humans instead of competing directly with them. Some wolves were fearful and aggressive toward humans. Others might have been friendlier, which also likely gave them access to the hunter's food supplies. As time passes, modern human behavior starts showing up. Fixed homes begin to appear in places that benefit people, maybe next to a river or places where the soil is fertile. This way, they're also able to become farmers and develop agriculture. As they settle down, communities start arising too. Since they are very social beings, it's only natural they're drawn to one another. Soon humans are all over the planet, spread around the continents, with communities and families of their own, and don't forget the pets. The planet's landscape shifts like it did in our reality, to accommodate the needs of humans. Cultures are developed, rivalry begins, they start pushing each other to great lengths. thousands and thousands more years go by, and this human society starts to look a lot like the one we have today. Still, things might have happened a different way. There might have already been an intelligent species they would have had to compete with, and then their progress would probably have staggered a bit. Maybe a society could emerge where different intelligent life forms would be able to peacefully coexist. When you enter a coffee shop, a meerkat might be your barista. Your landlords could be a couple of gorilla siblings. Or when you go to a barber shop, a primate that's only wearing a barber jacket would be the one to cut your hair. If not, it's likely things would end up the same as our reality. Humans would not be the most numerous species on Earth, but they would certainly still be the most impactful one.
The deeper you go, the creepier they get. You're about to travel to the darkest ocean depths and check whether this claim is true. Are the creatures living there as scary as people think? You go 120 feet down underwater. Pay close attention to the bottom under your flippers. Oh my, what's that terrifying face half hidden in the sand? That's the northern stargazer. You can meet this fish in the eastern United States. It buries itself in the sand until unsuspecting prey gets near. Then, the nightmarish creature electrically shocks the poor animal and dines on it. You are moving deeper to 240 feet under the surface. That's where you spot a colorful, puffy creature, no more than 1 foot long. It's the sarcastic fringehead. At first, the fish seems to be harmless. Only unless it's provoked. When this animal is agitated, it opens its huge mouth to fend off predators. This defense tactic is a sight to behold, both surprising and frightening. Luckily, the fish is no threat to people whatsoever. The creature you see next can comfortably live in shallow waters, but you meet it at a depth of 900 feet. You don't even need to wonder why the animal's called the Game of Thrones brittle star. Unlike starfish that slowly crawl across the seabed, this creature moves fast. It wriggles its long, flexible arms to get from point A to point B. Its body is protected by a hard calcium carbonate shell. Also called snake stars, these creatures are tiny and easily fit in nooks, cracks, and small crevices in rocks. At a much greater depth of 2,000 feet, you come across the giant squid. For a long time, it was thought to be a creature from legends rather than a real animal. The giant squid was first caught on camera in 2001, and it's exactly as big as its name implies. The creature's eyeballs are the size of soccer balls, and the squid itself can weigh up to 600 pounds. Almost 3,000 feet below the surface, you get spooked by another creepy-looking animal. It's somewhat red and rather small, no longer than 1 foot long. As you approach the creature, it looks rather docile, or maybe just indifferent. The vampire squid, that's the animal's name, looks like an umbrella with tentacles. It doesn't even produce ink, so you leave it alone. Soon after that, at a depth of 3,200 feet, you meet the cookie cutter shark. This creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to big fishes, dolphins, whales, and sometimes even people. Then, using its neatly arranged serrated teeth, it gouges out cookie-sized pieces of meat. This nasty glowing animal doesn't grow larger than 20 inches and lives in the ocean twilight zone. At a depth of 3,300 feet, the light becomes a rare and valuable thing. The animals living that far away from the surface have to evolve unusual features to survive. That's how the barrel-eye fish ended up with a transparent head and 2 super-sensitive barrel-shaped eyes. Right now, pretty much like always, they're pointed upward, allowing the fish to see potential prey and you. Almost 4,000 feet below the surface, you see something droopy and saggy. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or any muscle. Its jelly-like flesh lets the creature survive incredible water pressure. Despite its appearance, the blobfish is an ambush predator. It usually lies very still on the bottom, waiting for unsuspecting prey to swim by. You go a bit deeper and spot a creature that looks particularly ghastly. The goblin shark senses prey with its snout. The creature's terrifying jaws are attached to elastic ligaments. When some animal comes too close, the shark catapults its mouth forward to catch it. If your mouth could do the same, you would be able to eat things dangling 7 inches away from your face. Even deeper than that, at 5,000 feet, you notice another member of the shark family. The frilled shark looks like an overgrown eel, but its gills are lined with red fringe at the edges, hence the name. The creature's horrifying mouth has 25 rows of razor-sharp backward-facing teeth, 300 in total. The shark prefers to hover in the water, waiting for its prey to come closer. Then, it charges at it like a snake. Suddenly, you see something glow brightly like an electric bulb. But after coming closer, you recoil in horror. The creature looks like an upgraded eel equipped with oversized teeth. That's the deep-sea dragonfish that can live at a depth of 6,000 feet. Chemical processes going on inside the fish's body produce an eerie red glow. This glow is used to communicate with other fish. At the same depth, you meet another deep-sea inhabitant. Its most prominent feature is its huge mouth. Thanks to it, the gulper eel can swallow its prey whole. Its stomach can expand to a terrifying size when it needs to fit something large. At a depth of 6,600 feet, you come across an angry-looking creature with a fishing rod over its head. It's the deep-sea anglerfish. The animal has an unusual dorsal spine, even though it's worn only by females. It protrudes above their mouth and has a lure on its tip, some luminous flesh that baits prey. The anglerfish has such a big mouth and its body is so pliable that it can swallow animals twice its own size. You're 7,000 feet down when you see another fish that's glowing in the dark. The black dragonfish is a sly creature. It has its light-producing organs arranged along its belly. The spooky creature also has gleaming flashlights next to its eyes. They help the animal find prey and attract potential mates. At the same depth, you also spot an enormous pillbug. But unlike the critter you can find in your garden, this one is at least 20 inches long. That's the giant isopod, and it is, indeed, related to the roly-poly, as well as crabs and shrimps. These creatures may look somewhat scary, but they're harmless. They feast on other deep-sea animals only after those have passed away. At a depth of 13,000 feet, you notice the ocean floor has become a bit fluffy. That's because it's covered with zombie worms. These creatures rarely grow to be more than 2 inches long, and still, they can break down fairly large animals, so strong the acid they produce is. The worms' feathery appearance makes them look like plants, but the truth is, these creatures munch on rock-hard bones of the world's largest animals, such as whales. The grid-eye fish almost scares you out of your mind soon after that. This creature has a pair of large greenish oval plates on the top of its head and no eyes whatsoever. Experts believe that these bony membranes detect light coming from predators, saving the fish's life. You're now 3 miles down below the surface, and that's where you spot something bizarre on the bottom. It's definitely a fish, but it's standing on the ocean floor on 3 long, rigid legs. Ah, it's the tripod fish. Curious rather than scary. This creature has adapted to the almost complete darkness by giving up on its vision. It has to rely on vibration and touch to sense prey. And then, the fish uses its fins as hands to transport food directly into its mouth. You don't have time to go any deeper before you spot the faceless fish. This slightly off-putting creature has no eyes, and its mouth, smiling a Mona Lisa smile, is underneath its body. For the first time, the faceless cusk, which is the creature's official name, was seen more than a century ago. The next time it happened was only in 2017. Once you've reached a depth of 6 miles below the surface, you see deep-sea cucumbers. These bizarre creatures are much bigger than their shallow water relatives. They spend most of their time on the sea floor. But if they need to escape predators, they are able to swim away. Deep-sea cucumbers have bright purplish coloring, tiny feet, and tentacles that surround their mouths. Cute. The question is, why do these deep-sea creatures look so scary? Life is very different there, at the bottom. Tremendous water pressure, a lack of food, and constant darkness. You have to adapt to survive in such extreme conditions.
We're in Siberia. It's so cold here that freezing gusts of wind are burning your face. All that white snow seems to be blinding you. This place resembles Antarctica because of the permafrost. Recently, a group of scientists researched one of the local rivers. With the help of a drilling rig, they extracted several samples of frozen soil. The scientists were shocked to find living creatures inside the ice. Later in the laboratory, they realized that the creatures were microscopic multi-celled organisms known as deloid rotifers. These creatures looked like little worms. Scientists knew that these worms could live in frozen conditions for up to 10 years. But the age of the rotifers found in the ice was about 24,000 years. And after defrosting, they began to reproduce, as if they had been sleeping for several hours, not thousands of years. Further analysis showed that these organisms could stay frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. The rotifers might have lived during the time when people didn't invent the wheel yet. And this isn't their only superpower. Deloid rotifers are among the most radioactively resistant animals on Earth. They can survive in places where there's no oxygen and water. They can also stay alive in areas with high acidity and can live without food and water for a long time. By the way, these are not the only creatures that are known for living for thousands of years. Particular types of moss and some microorganisms are also almost immortal. Nematodes, also called roundworms, are some of the most adaptive varieties of worms in the world. Imagine the Eiffel Tower standing tall and proud. And now, let's make it 10 times higher and place it underground. Exactly at this depth, many thousands of feet under the surface, scientists discovered these creatures. There's no sunlight and almost no air in this place. And since it's much closer to Earth's core than the surface of our planet, the temperature here is higher than in the middle of the hottest desert. Millions of tons of soil above create insane pressure. But all this couldn't prevent life from developing here. When roundworms run out of air, food, or when the temperature becomes too high, they get into a unique state of stasis, or deep hibernation. In this mode, the worm's metabolism slows down, and almost all the processes in their bodies stop. The creatures can sleep for a very long time, and only wake up when the environment becomes more livable. By the way, you don't have to go so deep underground to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They can live in hot springs, deserts, high in the mountains, among the harsh ices of Antarctica, or inside animals and humans. Our next invulnerable creatures are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These are microscopic 8-legged invertebrates closely related to arthropods. It's impossible to see them with the unaided eye. But a conventional microscope will allow you to see tardigrades in detail. They look like minuscule bears. They're called water bears because they need a thin layer of water around their bodies at all times. It's necessary to prevent dehydration. Tardigrades have been found in all kinds of environments, from ocean depths to sand dunes. They're incredibly robust thanks to their unique organism structure. Yeah, they look soft, but their body is covered with a tough cuticle. This coating resembles the exoskeletons of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed their old layer of the cuticle when they need to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The bears can survive at a temperature that's almost 3 times as cold as the temperature in the ice of Antarctica. Heat doesn't harm them either. They have been proved to survive at the temperature that makes water boil. Also, water bears are not afraid of radiation and high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of the strongest metals, but these creatures can withstand pressures 6 times greater. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field. This is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't need this protection. They can go into near-Earth orbit and come back unharmed, all thanks to a protein protecting their DNA from ionizing radiation. Like other immortal organisms, water bears can fall into a state of cryptobiosis. Tardigrades pull their head and legs inside their bodies and fall asleep. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, or experiencing a lack of oxygen, they will remain in this barrel form until the situation improves. So those are microscopic organisms and microbes that can only be seen through a microscope. But how about something bigger? Meet ironclad beetles. They live in the southwestern US and Mexico. These insects can not survive high temperatures, live without oxygen, or in conditions of increased radiation. But their shells are so tough that they can only be pierced with a drill or hammer. Their durable exoskeletons are made of a special substance, chitin. It can also be found in the armor of crabs or shrimp. And still, the chitin of the ironclad beetle is so durable that it allows this creature to withstand the impact of a car moving at high speed. In times of danger, they can hide their whiskers and strong legs in special recesses in their shell. Other animals can't bite through the armor, so they spit the beetle out and leave to look for lunch somewhere else. As soon as the danger disappears, the bug stretches out its legs again and goes about its business. Also, the armor saves the beetles from dehydration, which is very useful in hot areas of Mexico and the southwestern US. Inside the exoskeleton, they can store moisture. In other words, these bugs can absorb water whenever they find it and transport this liquid inside themselves. The next creatures are incredibly fragile, but they know how to survive in places where almost no other animals can live. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can notice a pit. This is a mine leading deep underground. The air on the surface of our planet usually contains around 20% oxygen, but in the mine, it's only 10%. Inside the cave, the air also has an increased content of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. People can't breathe there without an oxygen tank. We can probably say that the water and air there are poisoned. Almost no animals would be able to survive here. Still, 48 species of living organisms have been found in this cave. 33 of them are newly discovered species. And they aren't the only microbes or bacteria that can't be seen without a microscope. Something bigger lives here. Strange white snails crawl over the walls of the mines. Transparent shrimp and a bunch of unknown kind of leeches swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and creepy white spiders run on the ground. And they all have been growing here for almost 5 million years. You might notice a water scorpion and another unidentified species of this animal. It doesn't look like its relatives living in hot sands or tropical forests. No living creature here looks ordinary at all. All animals are either white or transparent. They have no eyes, but are equipped with long paws and antennae whiskers that help them navigate in this dark space. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen the air contains. But the number of living organisms is increasing. The air is filled with methane and carbon dioxide. All the inhabitants of this cave have never seen the light of the sun and have never gone out of the darkness. It seems impossible to survive in such conditions where plants don't produce oxygen. The answer to the question of their survival is hidden in a small lake. The surface of the water is covered with strange foam. If you look closely, you can see that this white substance is alive. It resembles soft, wet paper that is easy to tear. The thing is billions of living organisms, bacteria called autotrophs. There's much more carbon dioxide in the cave than there is outside, and these bacteria, like plants, absorb it. But they don't do this with the help of photosynthesis, which means they don't need sunlight. They use water for chemosynthesis. What these bacteria secrete is food for other bacteria, and these other bacteria are food for bigger creatures. A unique food cycle that you can't find anywhere else on the planet only exists here. Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length, Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kind of like Nessie to me.
Do you know how harsh the water around undersea volcanoes is? It is so acidic that some samples even showed it to be at a level between stomach acid and battery acid. This water also contains so many chemicals that are toxic to normal marine creatures and plants. And yet, some species have found a way to live near or inside hydrothermal vents, like this special type of shrimp. This mysterious creature from the dark depths of the ocean has adapted to grazing bacterial filaments using its small claws, which are similar to garden shears. Hydrothermal vents stemming from the volcano coat the rocky surface, which means that all those creatures living down there get something to eat. In fact, undersea volcanoes provide 3 very important life-sustaining elements in those areas: minerals, hot water, and bacteria. Whenever there's an open fissure in the ocean floor, water seeps into it. Bacteria living in the crust of our planet then move in and remain in the hot water. The temperature of the water there can go up to 750 degrees. When the fissure erupts and expels the heated water, these bacteria get expelled along with it. There's something else that comes along for the ride: many nutritious minerals that resided in the rock that has been dissolved by the superhot water. The warmth coming from the vent and the minerals sustain the bacteria and give them the perfect chance to multiply. In many cases, the first sign of life around an underwater volcano is a thick coating of bacteria. The bacteria develop stable colonies, which is why other deep-sea creatures that inhabit these dark areas use them as food, like these shrimp. They're trying to eat that fast-growing bacteria and at the same time do their best to avoid the hazards of all the volcanic eruptions. The waters surrounding undersea volcanoes are usually too acidic and hot for humans to dive to, even when there is no lava, ash, or steam spewing from the craters. But when a group of researchers took adequate equipment and finally managed to leave their camera in the hot acidic waters for an hour, they had no idea that they were going to find... Are those sharks? They were hiding in the deep, orange, murky waters around the Solomon Islands' submerged Kavachi. Different shark species, including hammerheads, scalloped hammerheads, and reef sharks. The story gets even better when you realize Kavachi is an active volcano with pretty common eruptions. Apparently, submarine boiling lava and underwater explosions don't scare those sharks at all. It's their home, where they feel safe and comfortable. They must have done a great job evolving into this harsh environment over millions and millions of years. So now they can swim through steam and lava without any issue. One of the reasons could be the special pores that they have near their snouts. One of these theories even says if these pores allow sharks to sense changes in the magnetic field of our planet. And sharks need that information for homing and migration, but that also means that they can detect cyclones and hurricanes, thus able to skillfully avoid them and similar dangerous situations in time. Back then, scientists also discovered a sleeper shark about 12 miles from the volcano. It's a specific type of shark that usually lives in the northern Atlantic and Pacific, or in some cases even further south near Antarctica and Australia. Alright, now let's check out this unusual worm. Don't let its rainbow glow fool you. This mysterious creature is actually a scary predator, with jaws usually seen in horror movies. This creep lives 3,900 feet deep, down in the muddy seafloor near northern New Zealand. A team of researchers took a 3-week expedition throughout deep-sea areas in the volcano-rich Kermadec Ridge. This enormous area included 3,800 square miles of canyons, continental slopes, mountains, and hydrothermal vents, parts where undersea volcanoes release gases and hot water. And that's where they found this thing. There are 10,000 species of these worms in the oceans. Most of them have tails and segmented bodies, but they usually look pretty different from one another, depending on the area where they live. There is also a tube worm, which we also call the Pompeii worm. This type lives in hydrothermal vents, deep down on the ocean floor. The temperature down there sometimes goes over 140 degrees. Up next, we got a snaggletooth dragonfish. A team of researchers found these tiny critters in underwater volcanoes near the coast of Sydney. It's a black fish with translucent fangs that looks way scarier than most fish you'd see close to the surface because it lives in warm, acidic water near undersea volcanoes. Humans rarely get to see these deep-sea fish. Alright, how about a lobster? The Uroptychus squat lobster lives in depths of up to 4,600 feet, mostly somewhere around deep-sea coral. They're called squat lobsters because they look similar to true lobsters but are flattened in shape from the top and bottom. They don't go around carrying their shell with them, but their carapace is flexible and soft enough so they can squeeze their body into small crevices. When they do this, they leave their long, sharp claws exposed so they can keep unwanted visitors away. It's hard and dangerous to directly go into dark ocean depths and study underwater volcanoes, so researchers came up with a new way to do it. They study deep-sea coral. As they develop, the skeletons of black corals contain a record of the noble gases in seawater. This helps scientists collect information on volcanic activity near these corals. Check out these unusual yellowish creatures known as snake stars. Researchers saw them on an undersea peak at a depth of 4,000 feet. They spend most of their time wrapped around coral branches. That's where they can easily capture food particles from the purchase around them. Volcanic vents themselves hide some very pretty unusual creatures, such as these small hairy red-eyed crabs too. They live among rocks on the summit of seamounts in dark depths of up to 3,000 feet. There are crabs that live even deeper than that, 1.5 miles, on the ocean floor near Antarctica. They got their nickname Hoth crabs because of their hairy chest and are part of a lost world of deep-sea creatures that live around volcanic vents at great depths. Big male Hoth crabs spend most of their time highest on the mineral spires of the vents. That's actually the closest to the hot fluids that go out of them, where smaller male crabs live at the base of the mineral spires. After they get together, females crawl away, looking for the warm fluids that seep from the sea floor. They are rich in minerals, but they can be toxic to their young, so they need to get far away. This way, female crabs move to a safe place and hide from the potential predators, like seven-armed sea stars and big sea anemones. Wow, the cavalcade just never ends, huh? Now these next creatures, the Galapagos snakes, don't live in undersea volcanoes, but it's still fascinating how they've managed to adjust to living on the summits of volcanoes. The Galapagos Islands have 21 volcanoes, and 13 of them are active. It's a unique area with many animal species that you won't find anywhere else on the planet. A wide variety of iguanas, tortoises, lizards, geckos, seals, birds, and sea lions, and snakes that decided to inhabit volcanoes. Also, Alaskan fur seals have been popping up in some unusual locations, like the top of a small island that forms the tip of an active undersea volcano, perhaps? Vents there spew steam, mud, and sulfurous gases. Their surface is covered with huge rocks that exploded out of the vent a couple years ago. This place doesn't look that hospitable, but northern fur seals obviously wouldn't agree. Maybe because there's so much food around this island, like squid and northern smooth tongue, a deep water fish. Because of the ease with which they can gather food, it's much easier for them to take care of their young. And check out this giant woolly rat. It lives in the rainforests that surround the extinct volcano called Mount Basavi. Its crater is 2.5 miles wide. There are high walls around the volcano, and at first glance it seems like nothing interesting has been going on here, except for some unusual creatures, like this large fluffy animal that kind of looks more like a beaver than a regular rat. It's 32 inches long from nose to tail and weighs 3.5 pounds, and is one of the largest rats in the world. They have a silver-gray coat, and researchers think that they build their nests underground. These rats eat roots and leaves. This extinct volcano is in New Guinea, which is known for its over 70 species of mice and rats. So these woolly rats have obviously adjusted through generations and evolved to live in these unpleasant conditions.
There's a creature somewhere deep in the ocean looking for prey that would make Dracula himself proud. It's been around since before even the dinosaurs walked the earth. It has no bones or jaw, but it doesn't stop this underwater vampire from hunting. The name of this eel-like parasite is the Pacific lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating lamprey flesh. He got sick every time he'd have the original gooey fish. But the lack of bones and the fact that this lamprey tastes like slow-cooked beefsteak made the royal fall in love with the fish once and for all. The product of this love was a chill in his aged body, some heavy sweating, and some other scary symptoms, which eventually took his life and interrupted his 35-year reign. The lamprey is way better at surviving, as it lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. There are around 40 living species of lampreys still thriving across the world. The Pacific lamprey is just one of them. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones, and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on the top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a sucker mouth surrounded by teeth. It's perfect for latching onto prey and sipping up body fluids like underwater vampires. Once they pick a victim, they suction it, making a seal that's almost impossible to break. Scientists believe the Pacific lampreys don't munch on flesh. Female lampreys lay up to 200,000 eggs in nests that stay in fresh water for 3 to 4 weeks. Once the larvae hatch, they burrow into sediment and stay under the sand for up to a decade. When they hit their teenage years, these miniature Draculas re-emerge and migrate from freshwater all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This journey isn't the easiest, and it takes some changes to its appearance and physiology to adapt to a huge change in salinity. After several years, they go back to freshwater to reproduce. Pacific lampreys can use chemical clues released by their larval migrating pals to find their way. They can travel hundreds of miles inland to find the perfect spot for spawning and rearing. It's not always the same place they spawned in. Many species of birds, mammals, and other fish can appreciate the fatty flesh of lamprey. This makes them some of the most valuable players in freshwater and marine ecosystems. Another lamprey type, the sea lamprey, is native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's not that dangerous when it's at home, but once it gets to the Great Lakes, it becomes a real threat to the 4 local native species of lamprey. The sea lamprey is up to 4 times bigger than the lake species. It has unlimited food and spawning grounds, and no natural predators here, so it becomes cocky. It secretes an enzyme that doesn't let the blood clot. Once it attaches to some unsuspecting fish, it spends the next several months feeding off of it. And even if the fish shakes the lamprey off, it doesn't have long to live because the mark the predator leaves behind. Sea lampreys aren't interested in humans, but can accidentally latch onto a swimmer. It won't be fatal, but it's not the most pleasant sensation, and you need to get the spot of the impact disinfected. The Australian box jellyfish looks harmless, but it's considered the most venomous marine animal. Unlike other kinds of jellyfish that float with the current rather than swim, this creature can reach an impressive speed and choose its own direction. It has tentacles covered with tiny darts loaded with poison. People and animals that get unlucky enough to meet with those tentacles face some scary and sometimes even fatal consequences in a matter of minutes. Before you decide to never revisit the ocean, you should know that only a few out of around 50 existing species of box jellyfish have venom that is lethal to humans. There are some not-so-dangerous species living in warm coastal waters worldwide. And the most dangerous ones are in the Indo-Pacific region and northern Australia. A blue-ringed octopus spots a signature psychedelic color and the ability to take away your life. This cute-looking sea monster likes to spend its time in the soft, sandy bottom or shallow tide pools and coral reefs. It normally hides in underwater crevices, among shells or debris. If you disturb it, the octopus will activate its tiny color-changing organs and demonstrate its blue rings as a warning signal. The next step will be releasing a venom 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide. This venom is more toxic than that of land mammals. The octopus normally uses it to hunt crabs, shrimp, and small fish by pecking them with its beak and paralyzing them. There is no known antidote for the venom, so if you ever see this sea creature, the best you can do is to stay away from it. It bites without any pain, so you might notice when it's too late. The good news is that it's not aggressive and won't go after you unless it's cornered. The reef stonefish are masters of disguise in the underwater world that camouflage themselves on rocks, coral reefs, or just blend into the seabed. They thrive throughout tropical marine waters of the Indo-Pacific. Their invisibility superpower makes them especially dangerous to their prospective victims they ambush and swallow whole. If someone happens to disturb them, their 13 defensive dorsal spines stand on end and deliver a powerful venom punch. They say stonefish stings are extra painful and lead to scary consequences within minutes. They're called the most venomous fish in the world. If you don't do anything about it, the impact can be lethal. If you ever go diving in the Pacific Ocean, be careful not to pick up a cone snail from the seafloor. It has a beautiful shell made of brown, black, or white patterns. Like most other snails, it's slow, but it has a complicated system of seeking out prey. It likes to snack on fish, marine worms, or even other snails. Once a cone snail senses food is near, it activates a sharp proboscis, or a needle-like protrusion from its mouth. The attack is swift and super potent. The victim doesn't even have time to realize what happened to them. Once it's completely incapable of moving, The cone snail swallows it whole. Humans aren't on its menu, but it can still release the venom if someone steps on it or disturbs it. The proboscis can even penetrate gloves. Luckily, only several out of over 700 species of cone snails can take a human's life. But since there's no antivenom, you better not risk it. All 52 known species of sea snakes living mostly in the warm tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are venomous. The beaked sea snake even has the title of one of the world's most venomous serpents, but it's one of the few kinds that can pose a real threat to humans. Sea snakes prefer a peaceful coexistence and would rather slither away than engage in any confrontations. If you ever see them in the water, staying calm and moving slowly will save your life. Sea snake bites, although almost painless at the moment, can have varying degrees of impact. Some may only cause mild symptoms, while others can lead to severe outcomes. Most bite reports come from accidental encounters, like someone freeing them from nets or unsuspecting beachgoers stepping on them. Blue dragons rarely grow larger than the size of a grape. They like to swim belly up, so their brightest blues blend in with the ocean waters. And the silver front faces down and camouflages with the darker seabed. Blue dragons feed on another dangerous sea creature and store up their stinging cells. Their venom lives on even after the fish itself is no longer alive. That's why you should be extra careful and never pick up or step on them on the beach.